Maybe you were called clingy when in reality you were abandoned one too many times. You might have been told to calm down when your body was screaming that something was wrong. You're not imagining this. You're showing the signs of a nervous system that's been forced to scan for danger since you were a kid. Now, these are signs that can show up more commonly in women. Not always. Trauma doesn't play favorites. Everyone shows it differently. Some signs tend to show up more often in men, like explosive anger or workaholism or emotional numbness. Not because men are less emotional, but because trauma adapts to how a person learned to survive. And sometimes for men, that meant shutting feelings down completely. And some trauma signs are common in both women and men. They're like hypervigilance, panic, difficulty trusting people, staying in bad relationships, isolating when you're overwhelmed, or feeling like everyone else got the rule book for life, except you didn't get it. But the signs that are especially common in women, things like difficulty setting boundaries, people pleasing, over apologizing, perfectionism, and intense sensitivity to rejection. These are common in women. They're not weaknesses. They're not necessarily female traits. They're trauma-driven adaptations to what was hard for you. And the good news is they can be unlearned, and I want to talk about them. So when I was in college, I had no choice but to overfunction. I lived on my own. I had moved to California. I wasn't, given any college money. I did inherit a little money from my dad when I was 15 and he died. And I spent it to buy a car that died. And I went to a language camp and it helped me pay rent a little bit at first when I moved out of the house very young. But by the time I moved to California when I was 19, I didn't have anything. And I was making pizza in a pizza place around the corner, which was a great job because I could walk to it. I didn't have a car anymore. I was riding BART to the community college, which ended up being a fantastic experience. But I really had to ration every dollar. And I remember, I used to eat for dinner almost every night French toast made with cheapo bread and eggs and milk and cheapo pancake syrup. And it was great. I was actually, it was a little better than what I was used to when I was a kid, when sometimes we didn't even have dinner. I had some very ragged eating habits as a result of how I grew up. But I also used to smoke cigarettes back then. That was a big piece of my budget. And then the BART tickets, and I got my clothes always people would give stuff away for free out on the street. That's where I got most stuff. I had one coat, one pair of shoes, both of them pretty ragged. I mean, I was poor. So the pizza job helped me pay the rent, and tuition was very, very cheap. And I managed, I just managed, I got by. But I had to overfunction. I had to work a lot of hours and I had to take a lot of classes. And it was kind of new to me to be so highly functional. And it was kind of a joy, honestly. I had this boyfriend at the time and it wasn't a very supportive relationship. It was at first and then it wasn't, and I needed to leave that relationship because it had fallen apart. But I lived with him. And boy, if I could go back and give myself advice now, I'd say just don't. He wasn't even my boyfriend when I moved in with him. Anyway, he was lovely in many ways, but he didn't stay lovely. He broke my heart, and I had to go couch surfing for a whole summer, just finding a place to live and scratching money together. I worked as a home health aide. That was kind of a good job because I could eat there, I could do my homework there. And then to get to my school, it was a 90-minute commute on public transportation, which was actually fantastic because I could do pretty much all my reading and work there. And then I had, oh God, this will date me, but I had, this was before we had, computers. And I had this typewriter that I'd gotten on the street, but this is so gross. It had been used as a cat box before. And so I had to really shake it out and rinse it out. And it smelled like cat pee and it had these little pieces of grit in it all the time. And I would try to type. And all I had to do was buy one typewriter ribbon and I got that thing going. And I typed all my papers on it. So I'd write them longhand when I was riding BART and on the Muni, which is the subway streetcar thing over in San Francisco. I write all these papers and then I type it out at the end. Anybody who's my age remembers how we had to do this. It's a two-step process. I was a good writer, though. It set me up to be an author today. But I'd write papers. And one time when I had a long paper to write, hitting those keys through all the cat litter. Oh, God. I'm embarrassed telling you this. It's so gross. But I'm just telling you, it took a lot of effort to be me back then. but I chipped off the bone in my knuckle from having to type so hard so many times, all those strikes. And I woke up and my finger was really fat. Totally great thing about going to San Francisco State University back then, free health insurance. First time in my life I ever had health insurance. And I went in there and they x-rayed it and they're like, yeah, it's broken. And they splinted it. And no, it was my right hand. I remember having your right hand splinted is a total nuisance. So I was over functioning and I made it go. I managed to do all of this by smoking a lot of cigarettes and drinking a lot of coffee. And I'm just going to say, for anybody who's going to scold me, I did stop smoking. I got over it. But smoking used to be, looking back, I can say that's how I stayed regulated because I had a lot of trauma back then. And smoking was this very yucky, ineffective, doomed way that I was trying to hold my mood together and my focus together. And nicotine will work like that at first, but obviously the side effects totally got the better of me. And I did quit. I quit when I was 34. And that was a long time ago, my friends. So I have got a long time of never taking a hit off a cigarette, I'm happy to tell you. But that's how I did it. And I would drink so much coffee and I wasn't eating very healthy and I didn't have enough to eat some days. And so I had this just chronic stomach ache. And especially when I was younger, that's how I manifested stress. And so I would just be like riding BART, just like, all the time with just like a sore stomach and stressed out and worried about things. And I really hadn't been that person before, but it was this fuel that helped me to do this. And do you know, I got like incredibly good grades. I graduated with honors. I did some really good work. I was the first woman producer of the small-time cable station that colleges used to have back then. And I came out of there feeling so accomplished, but just completely strung out. Oh, and I started being a comedian during that time. I was doing comedy shows every night. I was exhausted. I couldn't sleep when I had the chance. I was so worried. I was an over functioner. So this is a certain female kind of stress. And I've met men who are like this before, but it's very hard for me to be around that energy now because it's like, I feel like I'm made of paper and it is a match. It sort of catches me and I very easily will slip into that again. And doing the work I do now, like Crappy Childhood Fairy, do you want to know a secret about this? It can be an infinite amount of work. You could always make a better video or more videos. And then there's all this stuff behind the scenes, like how are we going to publish it? What's the thumbnail going to be? What's going to be in the link? What course are we going to put on sale this month? And how are we doing? And then, we have the whole membership program and I do all this coaching there and and all these people work here and I'm their boss. And so it could be infinite and it takes a very conscious effort for me. And it's part of my trauma healing to remember that over functioning and pushing like that isn't healing. It's not the direction of success. It's part of success to go in that direction, but like going further and further doesn't get you more success. It has diminishing returns at a certain point. So that's a form of female trauma. So after I graduated, I had this comedy skit trio that we had started during college, and me and two other people. And we moved from San Francisco down to LA. We decided to go try to make it in Hollywood. And we were good too. It was not unreasonable that we could do that. We were everything we ever did would lead to more bookings and it was funny. And this was the 80s, and San Francisco in the 80s was this incredible comedy universe back then where absurd was where it was at. And boy, were we absurd. You didn't have to have an ending for your skits. They didn't have to make sense. You could just wear some bizarre wig and, it wasn't improv. I did do improv, but this was not improv. This was written skits. And we talked to these comedy clubs into putting us on in the middle of a stand-up lineup, which is unconventional. So it'd be stand up, us. We were called the Comedy Cows. Stand up. So then we're let's go to LA. We'll go do it there. I did this through my last year of college. I was getting never more than 4 hours of sleep a night. I was earning $6 an hour doing the home health aide work. And then I'd get to school and be the very best girl of the school. I was so I'm going to do it. I'm going to be the best girl, daughter of an alcoholic mom behavior there. I'll be so good. I'll be recognized. But it was a happy time. I was exhausted, but I was so stressed. So when we moved to LA, I was able to get work as a temp. Even though I did all that work in college, I will say it was pretty weird how accomplished I was in video production at school, and I never got a job in production. But I did work as a temp at the public TV station down there, and I could not stop over functioning. So I was working 40 hours a week. We were doing like 4 or 5 shows or open mics a week. We were rehearsing every hour that we weren't, all weekends. Any evening that we didn't have a show or an open mic, we were rehearsing and writing material. That is how you make it in Hollywood. And if you keep it up, you might succeed. It's a pretty hard road. No friends, no recreation, no restaurants, no hikes. I lived in LA 2.5 years. I went to the beach 2 times. That's it. I was just like always writing skits and practicing. And the group was doing really well. I had an agent and we were getting gigs. And this guy, very well-known guy to anybody in comedy, Bud Friedman, who ran the Improv in LA at the time, said if we would get a director and tighten up our act, he would put us on the main lineup. Do you know what a big deal that is? Like that is like a huge opportunity. And right then, that was when my trauma came back and bit me. I was struck with these mystery symptoms. I had a fever. My fever was like 99, 100 every day. It ended up lasting a year. I started getting dizzy. And the one thing that made me dizzy was like bright lights in my eyes. And I was so tired. I was just like so tired. And if I stayed up late, and in your 20s, how sometimes you stay up late, if I didn't get like an adequate amount of sleep, I'd wake up like a truck hit me and it would take me weeks to overcome it. It was like a hangover from not getting enough sleep. And so I went to the doctor and I was diagnosed with chronic fatigue syndrome when they were just figuring out what that was. I think it's evolved a lot. What is it? But whatever. I had something that gave me a fever for a year and knocked me out. It took me a year to get better, which turns out to be very lucky, like not everybody does. I didn't get better until I gave up my apartment and I gave up the dream of doing comedy and I came back to the Bay Area and got myself a little job as an administrative assistant somewhere that wasn't stressful and got by for a while. And eventually I did a few small creative, projects and I made a funny short film that won a prize. And I wrote a self-help book that was well received. And this was all back in the 90s. And even though everything I did was a fairly successful first effort, I never followed up on any of it. I didn't really go for it creatively or with my ambition. Like I just got kind of like broken by that experience in LA. It's like there was this wound. I was just stricken with a loss of confidence and my creativity went silent for more than 20 years. And then it came back. And you see me here like I'm in it, I'm living it again. But this is what I've got to tell you because this is the truth that changed everything. This was a very normal pattern of a way trauma expresses itself in women when it's not healed. What was underneath that is I was dysregulated. I thought I was a failure at comedy. I thought I was a failure as a writer. I wasn't. I wasn't too lazy or too scared or too ordinary looking to succeed, even though that's what I told myself at the time when I was 30 and trauma kind of took over my whole life and capsized it. I was dysregulated. And that's why I gave up after every success. That's why everything was so hard for me and felt like I had to play small. Have you ever done that? You play small just to control all the symptoms, all the dysregulation. When you've been through trauma, especially in childhood, your nervous system learns survival habits. These aren't flaws, they are survival strategies. They are adaptations. You might constantly scan for danger or feel triggered when it's silent or shut down emotionally when you're overwhelmed. These responses aren't random. They often started as protective strategies, and while they may not serve you now, they once helped you survive. So you're not crazy. You're dysregulated. For some people, panicking and feeling like you just have to do a lot of stuff when things feel kind of quiet might be a flashback. For other people, that's anxiety. That constant preoccupation with how someone feels about you, right? That's a female form of manifestation of trauma. How do you feel about me? How do you feel about me? Do you like me? That can come from years of uncertain or unconditional love. And if you tend to isolate or shut down, that might be how your body learned to cope when closeness felt risky, which it was. Not all trauma looks the same, but if you recognize yourself in any of this, you are not alone, my friend. In fact, it can be incredibly helpful to know the ordinary signs that your nervous system is still reacting to trauma in the past. If you want to see that list, I have a free download that goes through the signs of dysregulation, and you can see how many of these are going on with you right now. I'll put that in the first link down in the description section below this video, okay? The dysregulation quiz. So stop thinking of it like you're overreacting. Think of it like you're over surviving, and it needs to be adjusted. So what do you do when everything feels like too much, right? Here are 3 grounded things that you can do today to start changing your life. Sometimes healing starts with small actions, but other times you need to make a bigger move. Something like set the frickin' boundary already, or break up with somebody, or make a real decision to walk away from things that are draining you. Change does not always wait for you to feel ready. It gets built in the moment you stop tolerating what isn't working. See, when we just go ahead and crap fit and fit ourselves to terrible situations, nothing can change. We're just like holding everything still. So when you stop tolerating it, boom, it begins. All right, so here's the first thing. Catch that sorry reflex and replace it with one true sentence. If you apologize all the time, another female trauma expression, I'm sorry. If you're like that and you didn't hurt anyone, this is a trauma adaptation. It's not manners, it's a survival strategy that you learned when love and safety were conditional. So when you get the urge to apologize, so let's say somebody asks you something and you don't know the answer, you don't have to say, sorry, I don't know. You can say, I don't know. And if you were a little late to something and you want to come in and say, I'm sorry I was so late, you can say, thank you for waiting for me. Do you hear the difference in that? There's like apologizing and then there's acknowledging and staying in what's true. It feels weird at first to stop saying sorry, but it teaches your nervous system that you don't have to shrink and be small to stay connected with people. This is actually a way to show up more honestly and more powerfully with other people. All right, number 2, get rid of one task that's not yours to carry. If your stress is always at a 9 and you're still telling yourself that you're not doing enough, you're probably overfunctioning. Overfunctioning is what happens when you're not used to have space to take care of your own needs. You rush, you hurry. And today, I want you to pick one thing that you're doing that is not your responsibility and drop it. You know what mine was today? I've been getting after my son to make this phone call to somebody who has this training program, and I've been getting after him. And even though several people have said, he's got to lead this, just let him make the phone call when he's ready. And so I told him, I said, I just realized this is your phone call to make. I'm not going to bug you about it anymore. And he said, okay. And I don't know what he's going to do, but it felt great. I think he felt more respected too. So you don't have to explain to people. You don't have to apologize. You can just let someone else handle these responsibilities. Or you can let it go undone. This can apply to housework sometimes. You can do it just once. I know you can. And just so that you can allow yourself to have the experience of what it feels like to discover that the world doesn't stop turning. This is how you start setting boundaries without needing a big confrontation or a script on what to say. All right, number 3, say one honest thing to someone who has earned your trust. If rejection sensitivity is running your life, it can feel like honesty will just get you hurt or abandoned. But staying silent can hurt you too. You become invisible to people when you never express what you think, what you feel, good or bad. So the next time you want to speak up about something you disagree with or that's hurt your feelings, but you're afraid it will piss someone off, try this. Say one small, honest thing. And if you can, practice this with someone who has shown you kindness. Not your boss, not yet, not your most distant friend, someone who sees you and who responds with warmth. Say something simple like, ouch, that kind of hurt my feelings. Or, I could really use some support right now. Or even, well, I don't agree. Radical statement, right? People disagreeing is like this hot button right now, but just try it. Just try saying, well, I guess I don't agree with that. You don't have to elaborate. You could just express it. Sometimes people are surprised. They're so used to you being quiet, they might not even realize that everything they say isn't matched in your mind. And so you're doing a service to people. It's a little bit of a boundary. It's a little definition to who you are. You don't have to be perfect at this. You just have to be real, and it takes practice. So you start with people who are easiest for you and work your way towards speaking up in any situation where it matters to you. Not every situation matters. You don't have to go, always say what you think. It's when it matters. Speaking up is actually what builds connection. And practicing this is how your brain learns the difference between danger, which your trauma is always bracing itself for, and closeness, which is what you want. I have another free download that might be helpful for you in this. It lists friendship skills. And I don't know about you, but I did not learn these at home. And it helps to have a reference to just be like, what is a good friend? How does a good friend act? And I'll put that in the second link down in the description section below this video. So you'll find it there. It's free. It'll be sent to you just as soon as you put in an email and we send it to you. For some people who grew up in fear, they learn to carry everyone else's emotions and ignore their own. Some learn to feel responsible for keeping the peace or for smoothing things over, for not being a burden. So when healing begins, you may find that you get these waves of feeling guilty, like I didn't control that for other people. It can feel selfish. It can feel wrong. And this is what trauma does. It can teach you that self-protection is betrayal and that being calm is never safe and that being in pain is more normal. So it makes sense if trust feels hard, if love makes you want to run, if you find yourself, choosing people who don't trust you, if you find yourself choosing people who don't treat you well. We do that sometimes because it feels familiar. I don't think that's all of it, but it feels normal. Healing means learning a new normal, feeling safe with safe people. And it starts with regulation of your nervous system. Just stop attacking yourself like you're some kind of screw up. We all have made mistakes. We're working on it. You're powerful. Your emotions are not too big. You just had to carry just a lot. It was too much. You were too young. And, in fact, love too. The longing for love that you have, it's not a weakness. It's nothing you have to feel ashamed about. It means you're still alive inside. You're already doing the most productive thing. You're healing from the past. And every time you go for that walk or eat that real meal or you stay connected to a friend, you're building the strength that you've always needed. This is what real recovery looks like. Not perfect, not polished, but honest. You fall down, you get back up. You learn new tools and you keep showing up even on the days when it's messy. Messy is the new normal. If you're tired of waiting to be ready, good. Start now, start small. Start while you're still unsure, like where this is all going, because the life you want is built by what you do today. You don't have to stay stuck. You can start changing things today, even if it's just one small thing. If you like this video, I've got one you're going to love right here, and I will see you very soon. Dysregulation gets activated when you're confronted with stressors and crises. The perceived noise of all that stress is you're experiencing it like flooding, like loud.